For most of us, walking is something we take for granted, but for this woman, it is too big of a burden that her body cannot support it anymore. Every step she makes is an agonizing task, and the longer she can walk is merely 10 minutes. This monstrous tumor is the reason behind her sufferings, and sadly, it has been her companion for the past 30 years, and even now, it is still growing. On its own, it weighs a staggering 15 kilos, which is 25% of her whole body weight, now standing at 60 kilos. Adding to the weight of her burden, this woman has other smaller tumors scattered across her body, each one of them being a threat that disturbs her peace day and night. But if these tumors were her only burdens, she wouldn't be complaining at all. But unfortunately, she had been abandoned by the outside world, as no one is ever willing to come close to her in real life. She lives a life of isolation, and at 45 years old, she's still a virgin, as men never wish to approach her. She even tried to pay a man who would impregnate her, but he later refused to sleep with her. At one point, when everything was falling apart, she tried to put an end to her life, but that didn't even work, as her neighbors rescued her before she could do it. But it has not always been like this. There was a point in time when this woman had a lot of money and her neighbors were fighting a lot trying to be her friends. But that seems to be a long time now, which brings us to the question of what has changed and why this woman is now living alone. This is her shocking story. Alexia was a normal girl who had a loving father and grew up in a healthy family. At 15 years old, a small tumor started to emerge on her leg, and she noticed it very quickly and reported it to her mother. Her mother rushed her to the hospital, and the treatment she received seemed to manage her tumor. A few weeks would pass before the tumor re-emerged again, but this time it was bigger and brighter, swelling a lot and producing cystic fluids mixed with blood. As the last born of her family, her father loved her so much, which is the reason he invested a lot of money into her treatment. He was a rich man who had worked hard to build a great family, but one fateful night, he had a terrible accident which unfortunately took his life. Alexia and her siblings divided the heritage of their father, and with the money she had, she came to the city to start a business. She started to sell vegetables, and her business thrived at first, but unfortunately, her tumor also came back. When my tumor came back, I quickly tried to take care of it. I went to the hospital and doctors told me that I needed surgery. I had money and I paid for it myself, and the tumor seemed to disappear. I recovered quickly and restarted my business again, but unfortunately, the tumor came back again, but this time, it was really big and really bitter. I was scratching it every day, and I returned back to the hospital where they decided to do the second surgery, but that didn't also help as well. By then, she was in her mid-20s and her business was still growing despite the hefty bills of her treatment. Unfortunately, the second surgery, which was very expensive, didn't help a lot, and the tumor returned back for the third time. At this point, it started to get much bigger and she was no longer able to continue her business. By that time, she had a boyfriend who seemed to be the only person who loved her. He volunteered to help her with her business since she was no longer able to move around quickly because of her tumor. The man had promised to marry her, and Alexia had no choice but to trust him. She gave her everything regarding the business, and as it turned out, that was a very fateful decision. My boyfriend didn't have a lucrative job, and he volunteered to help run my business since it generated more money than his job. He was advising me to treat my tumor first, and he left his job so that he could take care of me and my business. However, I lost contact with him just a few days after he was managing the business. I tried to search him, but later came to know that he sold my business and left the country with all the money. What shocked me the most is a huge debt he had taken from our suppliers whom I had worked with for a long time. Because the business was registered under my name, I had no other choice but to pay them. Some of my suppliers understood my situation and forgave my debt, but a few others were adamant about the payment, and the money I paid them was supposed to cover for my medical expenses in a long time. With no business, no money and no friends, Alexia had nothing in her mind but to end it all. She had lived a life of luxury when her business was thriving, but this time around, she was living a lonely life with no support except her mother, who stood by her through thick and thin. As the tumor grew, so did her isolation, as many people never wanted to be near her. But even in that tough circumstance, Alexia had always dreamt to have a big family, and it was clear that this tumor was a big hindrance to that plan. As many kept a huge distance from her, she had an idea to pay someone who would impregnate her, at least to have a child. There was no man who wants to be with me. That's why I paid one to impregnate me so that I can have a child. The man took the money and never came back. I waited for him for 6 months until I was convinced that he would never show up. At 45 years old, I'm alone with no child nor a husband. At my age, it is possible that I might not actually be able to give birth to a child unless it is a miracle from God. This life is hard for me, and sometimes I regret the reason I'm alive. Alone and broken, this woman faces the most brutal realities of life with nowhere to hide. Even her neighbors try to avoid her as much as they can, which further isolates her from the community. It all started when a rumor spread out throughout the neighborhood, saying that she has a satanic power which can be used to poison people, and that the tumor she has on her leg is a sacrifice she paid in order to have that power. Of course, this woman denies it, and there is nothing to back such claims, but the results have been a deep isolation from other people even when she makes an effort to reach out. Only a handful of people are able to reach out to talk to her and even support her. I live a very bad life. I only have very few people who are willing to listen to me or even help me. Some of my neighbors bring me some food, but when they don't have it, I can go days without eating. I also have a good friend of mine who tries to pay my rent, but that's also not enough because they are both poor and can't afford it all the time. When they don't pay it, my landlord can take me out, but I thank him because he has been patient with me for a very long time. Alexia lives a hopeless and regretful life, but even with such troubles, she still manages to raise her head and look at the future with hope. She's not able to work now, but if she can get advanced treatment, she's ready to go back to work and build her life again. All she needs is to get advanced medical treatment, which would allow her to come back on her feet. I need to get urgent medical attention as soon as possible, as my tumor is growing all the time. 2 years ago, it weighed 12 kilos and now it weighs 15 kilos. I'm afraid that if I don't get medical attention soon, it will weigh 20 kilos and by then, I will not be able to stand up or go anywhere. As someone who lives alone, that would be a disasterful scenario, and I would like people to help me to get advanced treatment. If I can get better, I will definitely return back into the business, and I'm sure that I can make great gains since this is the area I have mastered for a long time. You can help Alexia get advanced medical treatment through GoFundMe links found in the description and pinned in the top comment. By doing that, you are playing your part in making the world a better place. Thank you for watching the Intacs. You can subscribe and share our stories to support this good cause, and we are very grateful for your support.